Welcome, everyone. It is February 13th, and this is our monthly farmers call. My name is Severin Garrett. This is James. We own Greenhouse Towers. We try to host a monthly farmers call. So all of you guys are either currently using the towers as your farming tool or you are moving towards that direction. And we try to come up with ideas and I guess, content that will be effective for you to learn new ideas and bring you value. Today, we're going to be talking about microgreens. And I do want to clarify from the very beginning that we're not using the tower gardens to grow microgreens. You know, Matt's going to teach us his techniques at a high level today, but he is not using the towers because you harvest so quickly. There's other methods that will be more effective. So I didn't want to confuse anybody that we're going to try to grow microgreens in the towers. This is a complementary income option for you with your tower garden business. Matt has generously agreed to give us a presentation of his, process, how he does this and his helpful tips and so forth. But some of you are going to have more questions than we can get to today. So Matt will be happy to chat with you offline, and he does do some consulting with farmers. So we'll be sure we share that information at the end. But just know that we're kind of at a high level, 30,000 foot today. We have two announcements at the end that are just kind of tower farm business. But with that said, Matt, I'm going to turn it over to you. And again, we just want to say thank you so much. Matt has a farm in Charleston, West Virginia, and it's called OhMyGreens. And it is a brand new indoor farm. You'll have to tell us about that, Matt, because he started in a greenhouse. And so it'll be interesting for you guys to learn about Matt and his techniques.
Cool. You can hear me?
Yes.
Groovy. Yeah, so we just moved into a new location. It's still getting kind of put together, and I'll carry my laptop around and show everyone. But I was in a greenhouse that was about 1,000 square foot, and we had, I think at one point, up to like 40 towers, and then of course our microgreens as well. We started with the microgreens about 3.5 years ago, in the living room of my home. Knocked out everything, put a film up over all the walls, started growing microgreens, and about 9 months later, I quit my full-time job, went full-time with it, and then I got that greenhouse, did that for a year, and then we're just getting this place still set up, but it's about 7,000 square foot. It's indoor. It's all underground. It used to be a laboratory where they manufactured e-cigarette liquid, and they went out of business, and it just sat vacant for a while. But it's very sealed up place. It has air filtration. It's like ideal, honestly, for indoor farming. And because it's underground, the climate control for down here is incredible. So it's like very easy to maintain temperature and humidity. But for the microgreen side, honestly, you can grow microgreens probably any environment. There's ideal conditions, which I'll go into through my PowerPoint. But I had times in a greenhouse where it was 98 degrees in there and the humidity was out, super high, and I was still growing microgreens like crazy. There's some that will not work for that, but a lot of them will. There's some that are very challenging. Honestly, if you have me help you with it, it won't be challenging. But there are some crops that took me over a year to get a hold of because it is a little different in every environment that you'd be doing it in. But yeah, I made a PowerPoint here. So I've never shared a PowerPoint over Zoom, so let me figure out how to do that. Oh, here we go. Share screen. And let's share this. So you guys can see this? Oh, yeah, I guess I can.
Yes, we can. Great job, Matt.
Okay. Yeah, so the PowerPoint, I'll just go through quick. I didn't spend a lot of time on this, but honestly, just write down any questions and I'll answer anything at the end. But not a lot of preparation has gone into this. So what are microgreens? They are young, so edible plants harvested at an early growth stage. That's the great thing about microgreens is the seed to harvest time. There's some crops that literally you seed them and then 9 days later they're getting cut, like they're fully done. There's some that take 21 or 30 days. Um, they're harvested at a stage at the cotyledon stage, so it's right before the true leaves emerge out of it. So there's a lot of microgreens that it's really important on when they're harvested because if you wait till the true leaves come out, it changes the flavor, the nutritional values changed. It can become bitter. So there's an ideal time to harvest them, which is that time. It's before the true leaves emerge. Yeah, they're very rich in nutrients. They're like very concentrated in it. One of the most popular microgreens is Waltham number 29 broccoli. It contains more sulforaphane than I'm pretty sure anything that you can grow. And I'm not going to go into it, but if you look up sulforaphane, there is a ton of benefits. We have nutritionists at CAMC Hospital here that are in the cancer department that are very big believers in it. They have cancer patients that are undergoing chemo or whatever, that it's like their weekly regimen. Like they take their broccoli sprouts because of the sulforaphane. I'll send the link to Severin and James. There's a video where they show studies on what sulforaphane has done to people that have breast cancer at the time of consuming them, and it will blow your mind. I mean, it will blow your mind. But microgreens, they're full of different flavors. We have about 25 different varieties, and they are like each one, they're very distinct in their flavor. They're incredible. Our restaurants, we have some restaurants that use a lot of them. Some restaurants use, tweezers and they're plating a dish with one microgreen at a time. They're relatively easy to grow indoors, depending on what you're growing, or outdoors. I'm sure a lot of people here are in a greenhouse. You can still, the method that I show you is the method I did it in my greenhouse. And, really you can grow the microgreens at least during the sunny season without using lights. You might want your lights on some, but it takes very low light to grow microgreens in general. So you don't have to have, like with a tower, when you're trying to grow something like basil or lettuce, you need good lights for it. With microgreens, you can have just basically a simple LED T5s or T8s, which are cheap. You can get them like $15 a light. So you can do it pretty cheap with lighting them. I barely use the lights in my greenhouse. On here, how microgreens are harvested. You could do it with scissors. You could do it with a knife. There's a lot of techniques. There's a lot of microgreen farmers that I'd probably say the biggest problem they have is the shelf life on them. Any restaurant in your area, they have access to microgreens because they have access to them through Cisco or US Foods, but both of those come from farms on the West Coast. So by the time a restaurant gets them, they were probably harvested, refrigerated for a couple days, went on a truck for a couple days. If they were towards the back of the truck, they were too close to the refrigeration, and microgreens are super delicate. So by the time they're at a restaurant 2 days after a chef has them, they're just garbage and they're really expensive. So it's probably one of the easiest things to sell because if you don't have a good competitor in your area, any chef will take local microgreens over ones they would get from a distributor. Like it's really easy to sell. And so a lot goes into that, like making sure they're in the right environment when they harvest. So in a greenhouse, that's harder to control. In my farm, I'm able to drop my humidity down to 40% the day before, and I'm basically taking all the moisture out of that grow room. So the soil in the trays are very dry. There's not a lot of moisture in the greens, and my shelf life is about 2 weeks average on most crops. But I mean, in the greenhouse, I don't have a picture of it, but in the greenhouse, I had to, kind of redneck rig some stuff where it was raining Thursday night and I go to harvest Friday morning and everything's soaked from the humidity. So I would basically just tarp my whole microgreen area of racks, put 2 dehumidifiers in there, and then just run them for like 3 hours and dehydrate that area. And or else they would be so wet. So if you are in a greenhouse, that will be an issue. No doubt it will be an issue, and you'll have to come up with a method for it. I have other methods I just never ended up doing because I knew I was going to get out of there. But why grow and sell microgreens? Easy to grow. There's a really good return on microgreens. The amount of time it takes to grow them makes it worth it itself. Most of the stuff we're growing on like towers, with the seedling and the grow time, you're 5 weeks or 3 weeks once they go in a tower. But with a microgreen, you're seeding them and then a week later you're selling them. So it's just a really, really quick turnaround, but it's also a really easy way to kind of add like some diversity into what you're selling. Because at the market, at the towers, it's a big deal. You really have to decide what's taking your ports, or whether you're doing like what I'm doing now, the NFTs too. And they're, those plants are in there and they're in a rotation. It's not something that it's easily changeable out whenever you just want to grow something else. But with microgreens, all of a sudden you could have 20 different products at a farmer's market. So, you're bringing more people in. There's greens that are really sweet, so kids like them. We grow micro popcorn shoots, and it tastes like you're eating movie theater popcorn. It'll blow your mind. Micro cantaloupe, sunflowers, they're all really sweet, so kids like them a lot. So it's cool. So the plant stages, so you can see a sprout. There's a big difference if you get into the microgreen game. People ask you all the time, like, oh, are these sprouts? And you have to clarify, like, no, they're not sprouts, they're microgreens. Sprouts, you're getting the plant whole, like you're getting the root structure of it, the seed possibly. The microgreen is just the stage after that. So you're getting cut basically where the soil line is on the tray above that. So you're getting the stem and the leaves. A little bit past microgreen, you get your baby green, and then you have, your adult green, probably what you grow right now. So benefits microgreens is something I made a long time ago, but I figured I'd include it. So high in nutrients, kids like them. If this is recording, you can kind of read back through it later. That's all on my Facebook too for OhMyGreens. Who to sell to? So our biggest customer are restaurants. Of course, during season, the farmers market. We do have a home delivery system that we shut off when we moved here, and I just haven't set it back up yet. But with microgreens, you could set up a pretty cool system with subscriptions. So you can get people set up on, weekly, bi-weekly subscriptions. And we would offer special stuff for deliveries, like super samplers. So it's a $20 box. It's a half pound of microgreens, and it's 5 different varieties. And it was probably our biggest seller on deliveries. Grocery stores. So we have our microgreens in 3 grocery stores, and then we try to, be involved with whatever local events really we can do. But restaurants are the big thing for sure. Selecting the right microgreen varieties for your growing environment. So if you're in a greenhouse, this will matter. There's some greens that, I'd say seasonally. So if you're a year-round greenhouse, like, James Severin during those winter months, there might be a couple crops that just do not grow well. So you just have to tell your chefs and everything, like, hey, this crop, we're not growing between, November and March. It's not a big deal. It's only a few crops anyways. And depending on how you set it up in your greenhouse or how your control is in there, you might not even have that issue. So the importance of seed selection and quality in the microgreen production. So this is a really big thing. Like my first probably year and a half, I dealt with all kinds of problems with seeds. So microgreens kind of blew up about 2 years ago. So all of a sudden seed selection was really scarce. There, you'd go to get your supply of like 5 pounds of a seed, and they're completely out of it. So you have to go to different websites. There's a lot of suppliers that their seeds, I mean, they're garbage. They'll mold, they don't germinate well. So I can show you, there's probably 3 vendors that are very consistent that I would suggest. You can see this one, True Leaf Market. They're like 85% perfect. There's some crops that are a waste of money to get from them because they're so awful. But microgreens, our lettuce, everything for the towers or NFTs, I use Johnny's. We probably all use Johnny's, and they're great. They're not great for microgreens. I don't use them for microgreens. For one, the cost, but for two, the quality isn't any better than where you could get them from other places, and they're better too, anyways. But True Leaf's good. I can share some other websites that are good as well. So the hydroponic versus soil based. So here's, another thing to think about. Pests are your worst enemy. All your guys, like, it's everybody's worst enemy. So once you introduce microgreens, you do introduce the potential to bring them in, because if you're growing how I grow them, I use soil. You could go a cleaner route and use cocoa coir, that maybe just has, a couple of things like added into it and amended with it, but maybe like perlite or something. But I use soil, and I'll show you the soils that I use. And I'm very, very careful with who I get it from. So I have a local place here, and they take care of my stuff better than what they would kind of do for just sitting out on the shelf things. So Promix is really good. You get it 3.8 cubic feet, and it's about $40. And it's very light and airy. It's peat moss and perlite, but it's packaged really well. It's made in Canada, and it's just really good for not having to worry about pests or fungi disease or anything like that in it. And then I blend in a bag of Strawberry Fields from Fox Farm, which is out of, I think, California. But anyways, it does run a risk of introducing pests. If you had larvae in that soil, depending on the garden shop you would get it from, if they have, aphids there and they decide to nest in the bag of soil you get, it would just become a bad day for you. So if you had a big chest freezer, you could freeze it for 36 hours. If you freeze your bag of soil for 36 hours, you run zero chance of there being anything, living after that. So that's an easy fix for it. But you could do them hydroponically as well. So I'm about to start doing them hydroponically and eventually switch out of soil. But I think soil is the best way to get started, because hydroponics, there's just way more issues that can happen with it. But you can get like it's called BioStraight, similar to rock wool, but it would be a 10-inch wide, thin, like multi-layers, I guess just strip, but it feels like rock wool. And you can grow them on that, and then have it set up on, kind of like a flood drain system. So if you had them on your racks, twice a day, it could fill up for 5 seconds with water and then drain. There's different ways to do it, but for 3.5 years now, I've ran soil, and at the end of the day, it's still better for what you yield and stuff versus what you could do with hydroponics, unlike the lettuce and everything. So I would still recommend going the soil route. But also, if you have the greenhouse, if you have room in your house, you could always do it in 2 separate places. Like, you can grow microgreens in a pretty small area. So if you wanted your micro setup at home, you could do that too, or at least, kind of get it down before you really set a spot in your greenhouse for it. But they're just 10-inch by 20-inch trays. So with microgreens, you don't need a lot of soil in them. The traditional trays are like 2.5 inches. The micro trays are 1 inch. So the brand you would want to get are from Bootstrap Farmer. They don't break. They're easy to clean. They're not porous. There's cheap trays out there, but a few months after you have them, they'll break. Like, they'll get holes in it. It's just kind of a waste, but they're definitely cheaper. But I would recommend trays from Bootstrap Farmer. So you have your bottom tray without holes that you see on the left. Then you have your top tray with holes on top. Yeah, managing pests and diseases and the microgreens. Really, pests aren't attracted to microgreens. Like aphids, you would probably never find them on your microgreens. They would go to like all of your lettuce and stuff that's producing a lot of like nitrogen, but microgreens, nothing's really attracted to them other than maybe like gnats. You can grow almost all of your microgreens without nutrients. So I grew them for years with just water. Now there's certain crops that they get the leafy mix that I use for my hydroponics, but there's a lot of micro farmers that they do absolutely no nutrients at all, just tap water. And of course, we still run no pesticides. So the different techniques for vertical farming is this. So these are 48-inch wide trays by 18-inch depth. You can get them in different heights. You know, you can get them on like Amazon, I think for 130 bucks, 140 bucks. But if you have a Sam's Club or a Costco near you, it's the best place because these racks are really well built. They're strong. They come with the wheels, so they're good, and they're like $110. So I'd recommend Sam's Club or Costco for the racks. The lights, you can get the lights on Amazon. There's some brands that I can share in like another email, but just your typical T5 LEDs or T8s, they'll do great with it. And yeah, you can see, depending on the crops you're going to grow, you can set your spacing different between the levels. But you fit 4 trays a level. And what I think here, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 levels. So that's 20 trays a rack. And just to kind of give you like some insight on it, a tray, your cheapest tray is a $20 tray at retail. Some trays are $35, maybe even to $40 on like a couple crops. But you can do the math on that. Like one rack can produce some pretty good money. Yeah, tips for expanding your microgreen operation. I probably could have thought about this more. It would just be, you know, like farmers markets offering samples. You know, you don't want to take live trays. People try it to the farmers market to try to sell everything that way because you'll deal with too many issues of, you know, the plants wilting or just all kinds of stuff. So you want everything to be harvested and cold before it would go to the market. But I'll take a couple of live trays to be able to show people how they grow, cut live samples right off the tray. And that's a really easy way to gain customers. And then the packaging for it, most micro farms, they're on the same size packaging that I do. So this container that you see in the picture, I think it's listed. I get all my containers through Webstront, and that is I could go through there and look, but I think it shows a 12-ounce container, so it's a hinged lid. You do not want to get containers that have the holes in it like you would get with berries and stuff. You want it to be sealed because you want the greens to be very, very dry. And you know, the labels, I actually make those labels. We're about to switch and have them professionally made on their like wheels, so that way we can just keep snagging them off a roll as we're packaging. But these are just Avery labels. You can order them on Amazon, get them at Walmart. They're 2-inch by 4-inch, and then you could just design your label. And I mean, this label, I made it when I made OhMyGreens, and I've just still rocked with it because there's never been an issue with it. So it's worked really well. You know, collaborating with chefs, building relationships in the culinary industry is like one of my favorite things. You know, I communicate with all of our chefs really often. When the seasons change, the menus change, they involve me in it. So being involved with your local restaurants is like key in this because they can become huge customers. Like some of our restaurants, they're spending, you know, $250 to $300 every week on microgreens. So like they're, you know, and it's just important to be with them to be able to, you know your products. And when they say, you know, I get texts all the time. It's like 2 a.m. and they just got out of the kitchen. They're like, hey, we have an event tomorrow. This is what I'm going to make. What do you have? So if you know your food well and you know your micros well, then you can pair stuff with it, and then they trust you. And um, yeah, it's probably my favorite thing. Like I'm close with every chef that we work with, and it's really cool. I can go into this probably at a later time. You know, I have all kinds of different spreadsheets and stuff breaking it down, but the economics of microgreen farming, so the cost, pricing, and profitability. Uh, I'll say this: the cost is very minimal, and the profitability is really high. Like it's probably the best thing you could farm. Like that and mushrooms are probably the most profitable things you could grow in your farm, as just because of how fast they can grow, how little space they take. Um, that's the key for it, you know, right there. So educating, inspiring others about microgreens. So, you know, I probably don't even have to go into this much because if you have a farm now, you're probably already doing it and getting out and talking to people. I know James and Severin do it like crazy, but I love working with schools. We actually build our own grow kits. I built like a heat press to take these certain type of trays that I get, and I put the drain holes in them. We build grow kits and we sell them. And it works really well when we have schools come to do tours because I'll teach the kids how to grow the microgreens. Then they take that kit home, set it on their counter, water it once every couple days, and then a week and a half later, they get to eat what they grew and their parents get to see it. And they're like, it's a whole new thing. So that's, pretty fun. Yeah, the innovations in microgreens. Honestly, my setup is super basic and uh like the Enviro step, I had that at the greenhouse and I have like my dosatrons here at the farm, but for the microgreen side, it's just all watered, hand watered, with my hose. And that's the best way to start because each microgreen, now some are similar, but each microgreen takes different amounts of water and the only way to learn it is to get the hang of it. And that mainly comes to the weight of a tray. You get really good at walking by a tray and lifting it with a finger. And depending on how light it is, you know how much to water it. And there's certain crops like a micro cilantro where if you watered it as much as you watered broccoli, then it'll dampen off and you'll come in hours later and they all have fallen over and it's garbage. So you learn what doesn't take as much water. So setting up an automation for it is almost impossible in the beginning because you have to know that like, okay, this rack takes less water, so it's going to get, so hand watering is the best way in the beginning. And then you could probably get into a cooler setup with automation. And that's it for the PowerPoint. So let me push this screen over to my laptop. Crap. Okay, I'm just gonna carry this around. This is our farm. It's kind of a mess right now because we had a big Super Bowl party here, so we have like ping pong and all that out. But this room, that's the front door right back there. This is like our learning center, so it'll have 12 workstations set up, and we'll be doing stuff with schools. So it all looks in at the micro side of the farm, which I'm not sure if it'll clear up. Yeah, so you can see through all the windows. So all the workstations will be set up in here. We get to teach, do the grow kits with people all the way from kindergarteners to, seniors at university. And then we're also going to do a guest chef series. So it'll be like a rotating chef series where they come in. It's a prepaid event. So like a couple, they would come in, their name's on a table and there's a harvest list on there with a pair of scissors and it'll say today we're making this, harvest a half pound of kale. And people will get to walk into the farm and harvest everything, bring it back, and then learn how to eat it. And we'll have nutritionists come and do the same thing so that people can learn how to like retain the most nutrition in crops or whatever. So that's pretty much this room. Out there that goes out to the hallway with the elevator and stuff. And it's my mom's office there. This is like my temporary desk set up because we're still working on the office. This is the hydroponic side. So these are our NFT racks. So they're set up. I don't know if most of you know about NFTs, but we're running GE horticultural lights. They're extremely bright. You have to wear special glasses to be in here with them because I'm not kidding. Like when I first was setting these up, I had the lights on and like 5 minutes later I got super sick and I realized that if you're in here without special glasses, it'll make you extremely nauseous and dizzy. They're wicked, wicked bright, but we still have towers. So I got 6 set up and we still have some more that we just haven't put together. We have this zip wall here, which is pretty neat. Back here is getting set up into our hydroponic nursery, but we haven't even really started on it much. But all of our dosatrons and water, nutrient tanks go in there, and we'll start our, hydroponic seedlings in there as well. Then my office is on the other side of that wall, but we don't need to go in there. So this is the micro room. Yeah, see my. Yeah, so you can kind of see the rack setups. It's like right now, these are all our hydro seedlings, but they're getting transplanted onto the racks once I get off this call, which is exciting. But we have like micro basil here, mustard, arugula. This is a really full crop, which was one that took me a really long time to get down. It's red vein sorrel. Um, it's cool. It's a really expensive seed and it's frustrating to learn because you waste a lot of money failing on it. But cilantro, sunflowers, pea tendrils, a Rambo radish, there's wheatgrass. Uh, that is a garlic chive. And then there's broccoli. There's a salad mix that we have here, a red amaranth, which will be really pretty in a few days. But everything you see here, other than like the big peas, came out of germination this morning, and they'll be ready to be harvested Friday morning. So some things like the cilantro has been out since last week, but it all gets planted here. So we'll stack up like 10 layers of our trays. So we make all of our trays at once, and then they get seeded, put onto a rack with about 15 pounds of weight on top. And what that does is essentially just, puts good contact of all the seeds onto the wet soil. So you get an even germination. And as it germinates, it will literally lift up a 15-pound brick. So today when we came in, I didn't get my sunflowers out early enough yesterday, and I came in and half of the stack was on the floor, busted, and it pushed a 15-pound weight off and knocked the trays down. Like, they're very strong. It's insane. But yeah, so we have a cleaning room back there with like, commercial sink. So all the trays get cleaned between harvests, and then they get brought over here once they're grown, harvested on the table, packaged, labeled, and then they go into a refrigerator there. So that's pretty much it for in here. And airflow. Airflow is really important with microgreens too, because they're planted so densely. You really want, like good fans running in that area, pushing air through 24/7.
Matt, this is amazing. Obviously, you guys can tell on the line how, we've got an expert. He's been figuring this out for a few years, and goodness, we've learned it. James and I are sitting here taking notes, and I'm
Yeah.
so aware of all of your just developed expertise over time. Are
Yeah, a
you
couple hours.
comfortable opening up the line for some questions?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm like very into teaching about this. Literally 2 hours ago, I had a meeting with it's West Virginia University, and we're setting up a program with them to where their agriculture classes come here and learn. So it's like a 2 hour class that is half of a semester that they're getting to do. So like that's another thing. If you get into this, you might be the only person, or even if you're not, if you become the best person, you can go out and offer things like that, which I'm really starting to get more into because uh, it's just added revenue for the business, but a lot of that's grant funded, it's government funded. So,
Mhm.
you don't really have to be like, oh, let me give a good deal on this. It's like they'll just tell you, they'll like hit us full pop. We have so much money we have to get rid of before the end of the year, which is exactly how this came into play. That's how they reached out. They say, we have too much money and we have to get rid of it. Uh, can we do something with you? And they are. Like, it was shockingly good money. And I'm
Excellent.
already here. I'm like, so I have to spend 2 hours, once a
Right.
week with you guys, teaching you what I love doing already. And you guys
Yeah.
are paying me more than I make in like 4 days. Like, yeah. So that's something, schools seem pretty interested in it. So,
Yeah. Well, it's
but
clear you're passionate about it. I love it.
yeah,
And it's interesting because we have a farmer on the line that is an indoor farmer like you. That's the Kenosha folks. That's Matt and Jane and Robert. And then we have Bill and Kathy, who are brand new farmers getting started near Orlando. Um, Obviously, we've got Brandon, who is in Wilmington growing basil primarily. But all these guys were kind of fascinated by your process. So I'm going to quit talking and let you guys kind of open up with your questions. If you'll let Matt know what your question is. We may not get to all of them, but we'll do our best. And then you can contact Matt after the fact. Bill, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll ask a question, Matt. First of all, thank you very much. This was incredibly informative and very enjoyable. So I thank you. And our hosts, I certainly thank them as well. But one question that I've got for you is I have seen or heard that it is not unusual when you're first starting your seedlings to actually grow them in the dark for a period of time or stack the trays so they don't get light during the development of the seed process. Or they use a dark room for the first 2 to 5 days before they even expose them to lights. Do you do that also?
Yeah, so it's called the blackout stage. And again, I think there's a lot of misinformation out there on that because, there's farmers that are selling their courses. That's another thing to look out for too. Somehow during like 2 years ago, it took off. People started making these courses that had really no idea what they were doing with microgreens, but they're just taking money from people. And there's so many of them that are like dealing with like legit fraudulent stuff now because they offered no good help at all, really. But uh, the blackout thing, I would almost kind of put into that. There is some crops like popcorn shoots. You can only grow them in the dark. The second they get any light, they become bitter, they change color, and you can't even sell them because you couldn't even consume them. Uh, the benefit of blacking the plant out, the tray out, is you're just stretching it. So, and I've done it. There's been times where life happens, whatever. I missed my planting day by a couple days. So I've seeded to harvest greens, you know, like very quickly, but it's because when you would typically take them off the rack to go out under light, I would do that exact thing. I would get another tray with no holes in it. I would flip it over on top of it. And then leave it for 24 hours. And what that does, it stretches the seedling. The seedling is, kind of starving for light. So it's just trying to get somewhere. And that's really the benefit to do it. Um, I do it to my micro basil barely. Sometimes I don't even do it. It depends on how the timing's going for me. But the micro basil, I'll do it for a day. I'll put another tray on top of it upside down and let it stretch some. But other than that, I'd never black out anything. But I have a couple buddies that, are in the micro game and uh, they black out all kinds of stuff like arugula and broccoli. But I think it's kind of a waste unless you need to stretch the crop.
Okay, thank you very much. And the last question relates to edible flowers. Have you ever done anything with edible flowers at all?
Oh yeah. So in there, I didn't really show too much on the racks, but so we have nasturtium, calendulas, pansies, violas, a really fun one. It's called a buzz button, which is referred to as the toothache plant. So back in the 1800s, it was discovered because if you had a toothache, you could chew on it. And I'm not kidding. This thing, you take one bite, it feels like pop rocks in your mouth, and it will numb your whole mouth. So there's a bar in Disney World that makes a foam. It's like gastronomy stuff. They make a foam with the buzz button, and it's a sensation. It's an experience. And it's really neat. But you take a buzz button, it looks like a grape, but it's yellow. And I mean, you just take a little bite off it and it's awesome. It's so cool. But if you did have a toothache, it would legit numb your whole mouth if you ate a whole one. But so that is, under my edible flowers too. But um yeah, those are the main ones. And marigold. We grow marigolds too for it. But violas and pansies and calendulas are probably what, if you're looking for like chefs, what they would want the most of. But the buzz buttons are really fun. And if you have some open-minded chefs, they might come up with some really neat stuff to do with it.
Thanks again.
Oh yeah.
I had a real quick question. And your experience with your chefs. So do they prefer receiving the microgreens already harvested and in the your containers, or do you ever have chefs that want live from the whole tray that they cut it as they need it?
Yeah, so I actually don't allow the tray method. And there's some farmers out there that they do it, but it becomes way harder to transport because now all of a sudden, if you have 10 restaurants and they're wanting live trays, you have to think of how you're going to fit those trays in your vehicle while you're delivering them because you can't have them smashing each other because they have to stay pretty. It's really difficult to transport them, but also it's a health code violation to have a living plant and soil only hydroponically. Like, so if you took basil to a restaurant, a bucket of water, that's okay. But if you took a tray of microgreens and with soil to a restaurant and had it in the kitchen, technically that's a flag. You know, they're not allowed to have that.
Right.
But yeah, so I don't offer it at all. I get asked it sometimes and I just tell them why I don't do it, and it's fine. No one really bats an eye over it. If they're asking that, it's because they're concerned about the shelf life of the greens. And that's when you tell them, you know, our shelf life's different. Cisco's shelf life's 2 days, ours is 2 weeks. And they're
Okay.
at that point, they're like, oh yeah, screw it. And we don't want a tray to have to worry about watering, you know?
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Awesome.
Jane,
Yeah,
you
hey,
have a question?
go ahead, Mom.
I do. Matt, you mentioned a lot of microgreens when you were showing us your shelves, but you didn't mention sunflowers, and I'm wondering if you ever tried those, and what your experience was with them, if you have.
Yep. That's actually one of our biggest sellers. It's a black oil sunflower. And that is the number, like when I talked about who not to get seeds from and stuff, that will fall right in line with it. If you start growing microgreens, like 8 out of 10 places you'll get sunflower seeds from, they're awful. And I mean awful. Like True Leaf, they're really good for certain things, but every batch of sunflower seeds from them is awful. I have like the best plug in the world for sunflower seeds. They're sourced, so they're seeded in Italy, actually, and they're perfect. The germination rate's like 99%. They don't mold, they're very clean. And
Where was that?
so I'll give you the
Oh,
the
okay,
seed company, but
okay.
so like for that, I'll just tell it to you now if y'all are writing stuff down. Greener Harvest Seeds.
Okay.
That's the best for sunflowers. You know, any of the stuff they have in stock, it's actually my friend's company. We started microgreens at the same time. If y'all ever want to talk to him, this dude has he has done so much cool stuff. Like he has been on, you know, like the Today Show and stuff. And we started at the same time. He sold his microgreen farm for 40 grand a year after he started it. Then actually the old couple who were farmers, I think the gentleman got sick, sold it back to him for even less than what he sold it to them for. Started it again. He bought a warehouse and then started a seed company because he had the same thing I was dealing with at the time, which was constant seed problems. And it's kind of blown up now, and his main business is seeds. So anything you get from them, I would just, you know, 100% trust it because he is a micro farmer and he knows, you know, what issues to avoid. So
Good to
that
know.
that's
Thank
the
you.
best. And then there's some things from True Leaf Market that are really good. And yeah, those are your 2 best bets for seeds. But sunflowers for sure. It's anytime you have kids trying stuff, it's their favorite. It's like buttery and nutty and it's crunchy.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
Got anything else, Mom? Boy.
No.
All right.
It's funny, Matt's mom also works at his farm. So we've got 2 Matts and both of their moms are helping them at the farm. That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah,
And y'all
sweet.
are indoor farmers, which is also interesting.
Yeah.
So
Never too old to get
Kenosha
help
is
from
the one group, and then Charleston, West Virginia. Matt, did you have a question? I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
interrupted you.
Oh no, thank you, Severin and James for the meeting, and Matt for sharing all the awesome knowledge there. I definitely learned some things, and curious around like the go to market stuff. So thanks for the share on the chefs and just all that. My I guess first question is on the lighting. So we're using like the Barina T5 like 6500 Kelvin shop lights right now, and it sounds like you're possibly doing the same T5 or T8. Like, is there any reason to look at anything other than that?
No, the Barinas is the way to go for how cheap they are.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. And then the NFT you showed us, are you planning on that for leafy greens? Or I've seen some people that are growing microgreens in like a 4-inch or a 10-inch NFT setup.
Yeah. So I have the 10-inch set up. I haven't put those racks together yet, but they are 6-foot channels, 10 inches wide, and that's what you roll that bio straight out on.
Yeah.
So it comes in like 100-foot roll. and it's maybe like a quarter-inch thick, almost like rock wool. And yeah, you would roll it out, cut it to fit in there, and then put all your seeds down and do the whole process to grow them. But yeah, all the NFTs are for lettuce, kale, spinach, edible flowers, and basil.
Okay, good deal. Thank you for that. And then, so we're actually growing our microgreens in a flood and drain system on, I forget what the latest substrate my mom had identified there, but like a hemp or a jute combo. And it's been working pretty well. It's like a 10-minute flood one time a day. But yeah, very curious to see how you progress to the NFT styles for the microgreens. And then ours right now are, to go outside of microgreens for a moment, our NFTs are leafy greens, just like our towers we plan to have. And on the lighting there, you mentioned the GE horticulture lights. Are those basically for the crops you just listed off there, the flowers and the basil and all that? Or okay,
Yep. Yeah, so once anything I ever do with microgreens, they'll always get arena lights.
makes sense. So all right, cool. Well, yeah, thanks again.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me when you're gonna talk.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Matt, I got a question. When you seed, how do you actually seed it? Because you're trying to create a basically a coating, right, of seeds.
Yeah. So you know what? So you get your tray, right, and you put your soil mix in there, and you get really fast at it. Like you know the amount to dump in there from like your gallon pitcher, and you even it out so you want it all level. And then you get another empty tray, put it on top, press it down a few times to compress it and to make sure it's nice and flat. I spray it with the hose, you know, like a rain setting, so you get it nice and wet. And then, you know, let's say you're growing like broccoli, that's 26 grams of seed. So you take your, you know, you have a scale and you have your bag of broccoli, you pour 26 grams into it. And I've tried so many different things with how I like to, you know, distribute my seeds. And the best thing I've ever used is a red Solo cup. I'm not kidding. And you can have like 20 of them. So that way, if you're making 15 broccolis, I don't typically plant alone. Someone's here planting with me, and that's all they're doing is they're going down the list, and it's like 10 trays of broccoli. So they're making 10 cups of 26-gram broccoli seeds. And all you do is you get really good at sprinkling the seeds out evenly. So you want an even dispersion kind of the seeds on the tray. You do that, then I just spray them with a hand mister, a very light mister, just to make sure everything, you know, is kind of wet. And then, yeah, boom, stack all the trays. I don't stack higher than 6 trays tall, but you stack all the trays, put them on your germination rack, put a tray on top of it with a 15-pound weight, and then 3 days later you got, you know, sprouts this tall. So that's pretty much it. But every seed takes different weight. Like
Right.
Excellent. Wow. We haven't yet grown any microgreens, and I love the fact, I don't know if you guys are picking up on this, but none of us are in competition against one another. We're in different markets, and we're so grateful that Matt's sharing his knowledge so freely with us today. But it's just fascinating how every Tower Garden farmer is doing a little bit different business model to make their income, and Matt's is very different than ours, and we love it. We love learning from him. So your models might look different from ours and Matt's, but hopefully you can take some nuggets of knowledge from Matt. We have a few more minutes. Anybody else? Ashley, did you have a question? You're looking attentive there.
No, I took great notes. This was a great discussion, but no questions for now.
Okay, yeah. And we have the recording. You guys, I'll put it out there if you want to go back to some of Matt's knowledge. Nate, did you have questions for us? Glad you're here.
Yeah, I had a quick question. Sorry, I hopped on a little bit late. I had to pick up my car. But yeah, the operation looks awesome. I was wondering, you know, have you so for pea microgreens, I've had really good results so far. And I've been soaking my seeds. I did get them from Johnny's, and I've tried like so far just a dwarf gray sugar pea. But I was wondering if you had a specific pea variety that you recommended, and have you ever been able to get away from pre-soaking the seeds, or do you recommend like doing that process? And one other question, with the sunflower seeds, have you had any issues with the hulls sticking to the microgreens?
Yes, yeah, those are actually really good questions. So the sunflower issue, that depends on who you get your seeds from. So the quality of that seed, and here's the thing too, you'll find 100 different ways that like soak these seeds this long, these seeds this long. I grow a ton of microgreens and I soak my seeds the same way for every single seed. And I have a ton of different seeds that get soaked. I get a 5-gallon bucket. I put them in mesh nets. So if I'm growing 5 trays of sunflower seeds, I'll put 500 grams of sunflowers into a mesh bag, tie it, goes in the bucket. I fill it up with water. Or actually, I spray all the seeds off. So they're in the mesh bags, they're in the bucket. I fill the bucket up or whatever, dump it out just to clean all, get anything that could have been in there on the seeds out of there. But yeah, then fill the bucket up. I put a brick on top because some seeds float, sunflowers, cilantro, they'll all try to float to the top, so some won't be fully wet. And I do it overnight. I mean, I'll soak them at 6 p.m. and I'll come in at 10 a.m. or noon and I'll pour all the water out. I'll spray them one time just to get whatever off of them. And then I let them dry for like 2 hours because you'll run into a lot of issues trying to disperse like wet cilantro seeds because they're so sticky. So I just let them all dry the same way. And you know, I've tried helping people on like different groups and they're all bent out of shape. They're like, we're not supposed to soak these this. And I'm like, trust me, soak them all at the same time. It's fine. They're seeds and they're like all the microgreens plants, like they're very strong. If you got really sick one day and didn't water, I've come in my whole farm, every tray is laid down. Like you would come in and like want to cry. And you just give them a good watering and come back 4 hours later and everything is completely back to normal. So that's pretty cool. But that's the answer about the sunflowers. The seed holes on top, I leave my sunflowers in germination with the heavy brick on top for longer than most crops by like a day because that weight on top, the sunflowers keep trying to push up and it makes the seeds even weaker and it helps them come off.
Nice.
So and then the first few days, you know, I give them a spray on top. I bottom water and then I spray them on top and you brush your hand on them. And within the first 2 or 3 days, every seed hole will be off.
Nice. Nice.
Because
Do you
that
have
becomes the
them?
issue. If you sell microgreens and they have the seed holes on there, then you are introducing a kind of a contamination. No one probably ever say anything to you, but that seed was in the soil, probably has remnants of soil. It, you know, you're not supposed to have the seed in there, so you don't want it. And what was your first question again?
Oh, it was about the pea shoots. Do you have a specific pea variety you recommend?
Yeah, the dwarf peas are good. Speckled peas are good. If chefs like best pea tendrils because they produce a tendril top that almost looks like a I forget what it's called, like a fern thing, but it produces a really pretty twine on it. But they all taste the same. So like when I'm selling my peas at a farmer's market, they get a different label. They're called sweet peas. When I'm selling them to a chef, they get pea tendrils. Same thing. Just they're both utilizing them different and it's easier to market it that way. But they're the same exact thing.
Nice.
Because it is
And then-
sweet and it is a pea. It's just most people, if they see pea tendrils, but then if they see sweet peas, you know, it's easier.
Yeah. And then I guess one last question from a workflow perspective, do you prefer harvesting with scissors or a knife?
A knife. I use a 10-inch knife.
Nice. Just like a regular chef's knife.
Yeah, actually I did that for years and then I switched like 2 months ago to I'll just show it to you, but a knife like this, actually I don't know what you would call it. Almost like a bread knife, but it's not a bread knife. This.
Oh, nice.
So something like this. But yeah, chef knife works great. You know, I grab them like this and then you know, like I have my hand on top and you know, just cut above the soil line and then you get a nice little group of greens like that.
Is that like from a restaurant supply store, Matt? Is that where you're getting those knives?
Yeah, well, that's actually from like a knife kit that I have.
Oh, okay.
It's in like my travel knife set for when I do like cooking stuff. But I mean, you know, you could use a chef knife from Walmart. They actually
Yeah.
have knives that are pretty good for cutting microgreens on Amazon. They're like $10 and they're shaped just like that. You just have to find it. But if you looked up like 10-inch knife on Amazon, you'd probably find something like that.
Okay. I have a traveling set of knives too. I just didn't want to mention it today.
Yeah. I take
Bill, we
pride
got
in my
time for one
knives,
more
you know.
question?
Yes, I was going to ask Matt, in your classroom environment, and you mentioned you have your chefs come in upon occasion, I'm going to assume to perhaps learn from you about some of the different products you might be raising. But do you ever give your chefs the opportunity to teach others some cooking tips that they might be able to pass on to other folks that might be interested?
Yeah. So we haven't done any of the cooking events here at the farm yet. It's not ready for that yet, but that's how it'll be. Like the chef comes in and 12 different couples will come in and the chef's in the front of the room and he teaches everybody like how to properly like clean the greens, how to cook with them, all of that. But there's current stuff that we do in the city now that's with chefs. Like our farmers market puts on once a month this really cool cooking series from Chef Paul, who's like a kind of famous chef here. He's the first person to be a James Beard finalist. So he was just in Chicago for the last James Beard Award. He didn't get it, but it was for I think it was the Southeast. So it was like a really big deal that he was there. And he's an amazing dude, but he gives a free cooking class at the farmers market. There'll be like 50 people. And it's really cool because he always brings me up. I'm really close with him. He'll bring me up and he'll tell everybody like a 1-minute spiel of me, and it helps out. So
Cool. Thank you.
yeah.
Well, guys, it's a few minutes after 5. We try to keep our calls to 1 hour and be very respectful of your time, but I think we can all agree that Matt has really done a great job today, sharing his knowledge, his expertise. I'm going to share in that same email Matt's contact info. If you didn't catch it on the first slide, if you want more training, he does some consulting and he'd be happy to schedule, some time with you. We didn't have enough time to go real deep, but he did already agree that he'd be happy to help others.
Yeah.
And Matt, would you also share anything you would like them to have with me via email, and I'll just send it out to the group?
Sure thing. Yeah. And then for now, if y'all want to follow on like Facebook or Instagram or anything, OhMyGreens, just look it up and you'll see it. And
OhMyGreens. It's an amazing Instagram and Facebook page. You guys want to follow him. We get great ideas from Matt. He's very technology driven too, so his posts are quite innovative, and I like that. We have 2 announcements for you today before we leave. One is, I hope you all know that, if you have somebody come by your farm and they're interested in doing what you do, you can do something as simple as getting their business card and sending that to us, and you still receive a 10% lead credit. You can work with us each individual step of the process and grow into an ACR role, or you can just send the lead and we take all the ownership and give you 10% back. So I've had a few people ask me, they're like, somebody came by the farm, I didn't have time to work with them, but they were kind of interested. Those are people you just want to get their business card and send it to us. Even if you don't have time, we will follow up and see if they might be interested in a farm. And you guys are at all stages with your farms, and that's great, but some of you have more time than others to work with potential farmers. The last thing that we're going to cover is James has a tip for you on handling powdery mildew. We've been struggling with that in our greenhouse, and you guys are going to laugh.
Yeah, so some of you may already know this, but I was talking to Brett Bolin from Tower Garden, and I was like, I'm trying, and he goes, well, what are you doing? And I said, well, I use the 50% whole milk with water method because, it's just changing the pH on the leaves and it would help with the powdery mildew, but it leaves a residue because it's milk. And he goes, try vodka.
Straight vodka, 100% proof. Yeah.
So I went to the liquor store and bought a bottle of vodka that I probably wouldn't drink. but it's 100% proof. And apparently people buy it and use it to clean with. So, but I mix it 10-to-1 with water, and it stopped my powdery mildew problem by about 80%. And all I've done is spray the seedlings and the towers less than once a week, but let's say once a week. And what I found is it's just really, lowered the issue that I have, because I will deal with powdery mildew this time of the year for like 3 or 4 months, and it's annoying.
Similar struggles possibly here. We're using potassium bicarbonate in like a watered down mix, and then also grapefruit seed extract. Have you had any? Those were prior to your vodka discovery, or have you
No, I used I forget the name of it, but it was a bacterial thing that you could buy. Golly, what's it called? Pro something. But anyway, I just don't like buying products like that and putting it on the leaves. And so to me, whatever is the most easiest, cleanest, and most natural way. And actually the vodka made sense because it just evaporates. I mean, it just, but I've just noticed it's just really, really worked well. So outside Mill Stop, that's what it's called, Mill Stop. I used to use that. Yeah, the milk I've used for a couple of years, and it helps. It's just about changing the pH on the leaves. But ever since I started using vodka, which is now a couple of months, I've noticed a dramatic difference. And it tastes a lot better than the milk.
In case you need a drink during the day in the greenhouse, you can grab the vodka versus the milk, right?
Yeah, I actually had a point. I had the vodka on the table in the greenhouse, and one of our weekly customers came in to buy some arugula. And here's this half-empty bottle of vodka sitting on the table. And I didn't realize until she left. I looked at it and I'm like, I wonder what she thought about that. She was like, wow, James, that's,
Drinking on the job. Yeah.
James, did you raise the price of your drunken lettuce at all?
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, guys. Well, we'll have another call in March. We haven't decided on the topic, but if you have something you particularly are interested in, just email us and we'll be happy to answer or, add that to the future agendas. But Matt, again, excellent job. We so appreciate you.
Thank you. That was great.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
If you guys have more questions, we can connect you with Matt directly. So have a great evening. Thanks for jumping on, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, guys.
Thanks again.
Bye.